Hello, everyone. Today, we continue our journey into the heart of grief, delving deeper into the intricate tapestry of emotions that accompany loss. In part two of our series titled Understanding the Emotions Within, we focus on some of the most profound and challenging emotions one may experience in the wake of loss: anxiety, panic, fear, explosive emotions, guilt, regret, sadness, depression, and shame.
Yes, indeed, grief is not a simple journey from point A to point B. It's a winding path filled with twists and turns, highs and lows. These emotions can feel very overwhelming and all consuming, leaving us feeling lost, alone. But through understanding and acceptance, we can learn to navigate the waves of grief with greater resilience and compassion for ourselves and for others.
Absolutely. By shining a light on these emotions and exploring their nuances, we hope to offer solace and support to those who are grappling with loss. So join us as we embark on the journey of introspection and empathy, as we embrace the echoes of grief and discover the strength within.
Before we dive into our discussion about the emotions, we understand how overwhelming it can be, but you don't have to go through it alone. Join us every third Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time and Saturday at 9 a.m. Manila time of each month for our Step Forward Purple Heart support group, a safe space to share, heal, and find solace. At Purple Heart, we offer compassionate support and understanding as you navigate the complexities of loss. Whether you're grieving the passing of a loved one, coping with a major life change, or experiencing any form of loss, our supportive community is here to walk alongside you. And no matter where you are in your grief journey, you're welcome here. Join us and discover the power of community in healing hearts. And for more information and to join our upcoming session, you can email us in the email below. You can see it right there, or click the link on the description below on this video. So let's take a moment to define the emotions we'll be exploring today.
Absolutely. Let's start with anxiety. Anxiety manifests as persistent feeling of worry or apprehension, often accompanied by physical symptoms such as restlessness or tension. Panic, on the other hand, involves sudden and overwhelming feelings of fear or dread, often leading to intense physical sensation such as racing heart or difficulty breathing.
Fear is a natural response to perceived threats or dangers, triggering a fight, flight, or freeze response in our bodies as we seek to protect ourselves. Explosive emotions refer to intense outbursts of anger, frustration, or other strong feelings that may arise unexpectedly and disrupt our emotional equilibrium.
Guilt is a sense of responsibility or remorse we feel when we believe we've done something wrong or harmed someone else, leading to self blame and feelings of inadequacy. Regret involves feeling of sadness or disappointment about past decisions or missed opportunities, contributing to a sense of longing or dissatisfaction.
And sadness, a fundamental emotion in grief, encompasses feelings of sorrow, despair, and melancholy, permeating our thoughts and experiences in profound ways. Depression, a clinical condition, involves persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and disinterest, impacting our mood, behavior, and overall well being.
And shame refers to the emotional experience of healing inadequate, unworthy, or embarrassed in response to one's perceived failures, regrets, or societal expectations related to the loss of a loved one. It often arises from the survivor's guilt, unresolved conflict, societal stigma, or self blame, intensifying the grieving process and impacting one's sense of self worth and ability to cope.
So, now that we have a clearer understanding of these emotions, let's explore how they manifest in the context of grief and loss in our next segment.
About anxiety, what specific thoughts or situation trigger your anxiety related to your loss? And how does your body physically react when you feel anxious about your loss? And are there any coping mechanisms or strategies that help alleviate your anxiety? What would you do differently now that you're trauma informed?
So one trigger I had was when I was shopping for a gift for my niece, niece's birthday. She was turning 2 or 3 at that time. And I thought of it was just like, a simple shopping for a gift. The aisle where the toddler section was, there was also the newborn section. So while I was walking along this newborn aisle, I all of a sudden felt this sense of discomfort. I felt very afraid for some reason. I saw infant clothings, toys, things that I could have been buying for Gio and Josh if they were here, right? So again, it felt all of a sudden so uncomfortable. Again, I felt afraid. I didn't know why, but my heart was starting to race and palpitate, and then I started to have the shallow breathing. So parang nagpa-panic attack din ako. But I would have never thought of having to feel so afraid walking along a newborn section, right? But the moment I noticed I was uncomfortable, I knew I was getting triggered. So I had to walk away from that section where the newborn aisle was, and I started to, just gather myself together. Like you could or just to kept myself calm. So I started to breathe. Again, I walked around a few times around the store until I was ready to go back to the newborn aisle. I had to overcome it somehow, and it took a lot of breathing and then self-talk to really remind myself that I'm safe. And there was nothing in the newborn aisle that is dangerous or poses an imminent threat to my safety. But because my grief was still very fresh at that time, I was grieving the what could have been, right? I could have been shopping for the boys, at that time while buying my niece her birthday present as well. So it was very an unfamiliar situation that I did not see coming up until I was there. What about you at this stuff? Was there any thing in your case where this anxiety came up to you?
Well, in my case, I would normally react when it came to anniversaries. There was something about specific dates or anniversaries or places that would actually give me that reaction. Or if I see a specific accident happening that would kind of, remind me of what happened. And then all of a sudden, I get that feeling of being really scared. Well, normally, when it's like that, I try to just back up a bit and I start. There are things that it's funny, like I was sharing too with Coach Boy, that there were things that I would do when I'm scared. It's either I'm making a certain sound in my mouth, like I go away from, if there's a crowd, I go away, or if I'm driving, I start um, making a sound in my mouth, and then I realized it was something in trauma informed care that was a way to deal with anxieties. But yeah, I used to hum a lot and even tapping at the same time. But most of the time, I'd always step back and I'd freeze, kind of like that.
Let's move on to panic. So let's describe the moments when we feel overwhelmed by panic in relation to our losses. The different patterns or triggers that tend to proceed in our panic attacks, and how do we typically cope with the panic attacks during times of grief, and any difference to how we cope then and how we cope now. Do you want to answer that first at the stuff?
Well, me, my, after what had happened to me, anxiety and panic was something that was really a part of my everyday life. Like, there's always that certain fear that something bad is going to happen, even if in reality it's not that bad. But because of what happened, the instantaneous loss of not even knowing that was going to happen, wasn't planned or anticipated, and it happened. So, say for example, in a family day in school, in a school fair, my daughter Julia, she'd climb up just for fun, wall climb, and in my head, I'm like, oh no, she's gonna fall. Oh no, she's gonna fall. But yeah, no, she's gonna be fine. And she ends up falling down, and she can't stand up. And then paramedics come, put a brace on her neck, and take her to the ambulance and take her to the hospital. And here I am, I panic, that fear, and in a way, it makes me think of the worst case scenario, even if in real time it's not that bad. It's something I can't control. And yeah, it messes up the way I think when I'm in the panic mode. It messes up the way I think, and my body tends to feel very different. And of course, yeah, there are patterns to it, like high levels of stress can trigger me to panic. I have phobias. Say, for example, roaches. I have a phobia of that. And
Me too.
so, yeah, you know what I'm saying? And traumatic memories of whatever happened in the past, um, being in an unfamiliar place with unfamiliar people, sometimes it's part of the pattern of my panic. And yeah, sometimes even working with deadlines, changing of schedules, when there's a routine and then there's a certain abrupt change of something, then I panic because my I'm not too wired to the
Mhm.
way I was expecting it to happen.
Right.
And oh yeah, that if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, for sure. Because I think it's, with different levels of trauma comes with different levels of panic too, right? Not just particularly from the loss in itself, but if you could look back at the different, I guess, experiences where, again, I remember when Coach Boy, and as he did the episode about trauma and grief, he spoke about how when you have that intense emotion associated with a certain event or circumstance, that's what gets stored in our memory.
Right.
So in our body, right? So and clearly these are some of the things that we need to understand and learn how to process as we go through life,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
thanks for sharing that, at the stuff. Sa akin naman, if I can share, my panic would be more on work related. So in terms of panic that I sense after our losses, for some reason, work and the loss was somehow connected in a way. Because when I was pregnant, I was also working at the same time. And so there was a client that I saw in the past when I was pregnant that really, really made me feel distressed when I was in the client's home. So the interaction that I had with this client was very distressful in a way. It's so hard to keep myself regulated. As much as I don't want to say words that would put my license at risk. I definitely felt my heart just pounding, and all of
Mhm.
a sudden I started to feel out of breath talking to this client that I had to excuse myself while
Yeah.
right. So anyway, fast forward to the time after I got back um, to work after our losses. I ended up receiving an email referral about the same client that I've seen when I was pregnant, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" The I don't know. There's this sense of um, panic, but
Mhm.
by just reading the email, I just remember this person's name. Um, my thoughts just spiraled. Um,
Mhm.
as I recalled the moment when I was in distress the last time I saw her. And then all of a sudden I'm coming back not pregnant anymore. And then here it is.
Mhm.
I just have this overwhelming sense of panic. I couldn't breathe. My heart started to palpitate. I started to break down and cry. And I was at home. I wasn't even in the client's home, but it was just her name that I saw. And all of a sudden, it traced back to that time with my first interaction with her that was distressing for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Clearly, it was something that my body hasn't processed yet, right? And so that's what happened when I got an email from my work about this particular client. Though I tried to self-regulate myself as best as I could at that time in the home when I was triggered, I had to seek help, professional help. So I had to do some EMDR for me to overcome my crisis at that time. It was
Mm-hmm.
really, it felt like I was there. It felt like it was happening again. And I just could not bear the thought of me seeing this client with being in that state at that time. So, but how would I cope now is in the event that I get triggers at work. Of course, I try to regulate myself as best as I could right then and there when it happens. But if I notice that this is happening more often when I get ticked off easily or irritated or having that compulsive behavior to respond to emails, those are signs. I was able to pick up those signs that I need time for myself, or I need to distance myself, or create boundaries to prioritize my need first,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it gets to the point when I'm so consumed by
Yeah.
work demands, right? So I would again intentionally take some time to prioritize my own mental health needs and just my overall health. Um, Really having that sense of awareness when I'm physically or mentally off.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes a lot of work because even now it's still a work in progress. We just like in the nursing profession, we just don't know what we're going to be walking into.
I understand that because it actually has been happening to me a lot the past year, to be honest. Yeah. Together with panic, we also have fear. There are other emotions such as fear. And I was just wondering, um, what are you most afraid of in the aftermath of your loss? How does this fear impact your daily life and decision making? Have you noticed any changes in your perception of safety and security since experiencing your loss?
So in the context of, the pregnancy loss and fertility challenges, it carries a certain fear of the future, right? Fear of uncertainty, the fear of possibly losing them again, right? Of that it could happen again, the fear that my body could fail. The fear held me back to move forward, but in a way, it was something that my body needed. My
Mm,
body needed the time to heal and to process the trauma I endured from the losses. So, my perception of safety and security within my body has been compromised in a way. That's why it took us over a year for us to reestablish that sense of safety once again, to go through the process of trying the cycle again. So if you ask me now, though, that sense of fear has definitely lessened over a period of time, and it can be sometimes it can be non-existent. There are
mhm,
days where it's like I got this, right.
yeah.
Of course, acknowledging that yes, what was a significant event, but I was able to process that throughout uh, within the last year or two, that I have a greater sense of awareness now and acceptance of the things that I have no control over. Something that I'm able to recognize and being able to let it go now, right? But also understanding that in the present moment, I get to have a choice of having courage. So I think coming out of a near death experience and the immense grief I felt over the loss of my twins pushed me to become the better version of myself. Is it scary? Of course it's scary, but how would we know what's on the other side of that fear if we don't try, right?
Yeah.
Again, courage over fear. It's easy to say, but definitely it can be done. And I think really affirming ourselves that we can do hard things,
Yeah.
considering that we are still here and doing this podcast that's challenging the narratives, speaking of difficult emotions, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
courage over fear at this step. What about you? Do you want to share your experiences with regards to
Well,
fear?
well, in the circumstances, in the ways that I've lost my son and husband. My greatest fear is things that happen accidentally. That's why my kids sometimes they always tell me, "Mom, stop overthinking it. Mom, come on, let's take this step. Mom, you can do it," but or if there's anything, whether it's sports or work, there's always this thing with me that I fear to lose my kids. I even fear that in an accident they could lose me. I don't know, but yeah, there's always that fear. And because I have anxiety, it's something I'm working with, because I also know that it can affect others if I don't get to control that. But as human as I am, fear is always there. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Thanks for being honest. I can relate to that in a way that I think we are all a work in progress. Speaking of like trying to even discuss this difficult emotions, to really identifying what those fears are and understanding that it is a journey, it is a process, right? And I'm just proud of us for being here. Why don't we move on to our next set of question? And this next question is with regards to explosive emotions, which would include anger and frustrations. So let's identify specific situations where we've experienced explosive emotions related to our grief, and how do these outbursts affects our relationship with others, and exploring the underlying emotions and triggers that contributes to these explosive reaction. You want to start on
Yeah,
that?
I actually can cite an instance. When I got home from the hospital, because like I said previously, I've been in and out of the hospital after the accident, right?
Mm,
And there was one time that I came back from the hospital wherein I actually was at home for good, meaning I didn't have to go back to the hospital. So it wasn't transient. So it wasn't a transient visit. So it was like, I'm home.
mm,
And I get into the room and I see the crib of my son, because my son, the firstborn, carried over to Z and to Julia. At the moment, Julia was using the crib, but then everything just sunk to me. At that moment, I was alone in the room
mm,
and I saw the crib. I saw toys of my son, and I don't know what happened, but I just burst. Like, I was super angry. I kicked the crib. I managed to break the crib. Um, I I I actually punched the cabinet and another cabinet where all my son's stuff were. I opened it in the process of that forceful. I was really angry, and when I opened it, it broke, and everything inside that was of my son threw it. And since the room is complete, we have garbage bags and stuff for diapers and stuff. So I got garbage bags and shoved I just stuffed all everything in the garbage bag. And
mm.
then my mom comes in because she hears all this noise happening, the banging and what's going on. And then I scream and I'm so angry. And I said, I want you to throw this all away. I want this gone. I don't want to see this. And in a way, she made me, she allowed me to be angry. And she called the helper and she said, "Come on, just get this away from Steffi. She doesn't want to see this right now." So she was very cooperative, my mom. And she said, "Come on, go on. Just express anything you want. Just say it. You want to hit something? Okay, that's fine. Just don't hurt yourself." But it made me realize that even if I did that, okay, maybe it was a way of release of that certain pain. But at the same time, it was also good that my kids weren't there, because how would that sight look like to the kids? Yeah, so that's basically one of the things when I come to think about an explosive emotion. That was for me the worst, because it was really actually very hard to come home to that.
Thank you, Ate Steph. You mentioned about your mom being supportive there, and I think that's nice that she was able to allow you or give you that space, or at least acknowledge that
Yeah.
anger,
Mm.
right? And of course, making sure that you're safe in a way, physically, even though you have totally wrecked the things. But yes, I get that. I get that. My case with regards to this anger outburst, explosive emotions, I was actually much more angry about certain people
Mm.
for things that they have or have not done, either knowingly or unknowingly, especially if it's towards their children.
Yeah.
Um, Angry about the stigma and the silence, because many people are not comfortable with talking about death, especially if it involves unborn or newborn babies.
Mm-hmm.
I felt invalidated by the people's reluctance to acknowledge this kind of grief.
Yeah.
You know, angry about insensitive remarks that some people had said to me or made a comment, not
Mm-hmm.
probably directly towards me, but have heard from people made a comment towards me. What a shame. Maybe she's not capable. Um, you can always try again.
Yeah.
Wasn't meant to be. Are you not over it yet?
Yeah.
These statements, it really minimizes and invalidates the profound grief I had. So whenever I think growing up, whenever there's that sense of feeling like I cannot speak, or I'm not acknowledged as a person, or that I have no words, I get angry. And as an adult now, I never really had a physical outburst that would break things or whatnot, but it's really a lot of crying. And again, sometimes I would walk out,
Mm.
and sometimes if I would say something, it would come out as words that doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
we're dysregulated, right?
Mm.
But yeah, those are some of the things that made me feel angry.
Yeah.
I really understand now that turning that anger into purpose. So if I cannot, if because again, I was angry because of the insensitive remarks and the stigma and the silence. I'm able to shift that.
Mm-hmm.
If I cannot change the behaviors of others and their responses,
Yeah.
but by creating those changes in the work that I do now, it makes it much more fulfilling and
Mm-hmm.
more meaningful, I would say. This is why it really means a lot for me to be here,
Mm.
to really talk about it. Is I mean, we're gonna talk about shame later on, but it's there. It's in our culture, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
where does it end? Where does it end? But anyway, that's my take on it, and I think we can move on to guilt. Thank you, Hata Steph.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, about guilt. We're talking about guilt. I was just wondering, at what aspects of your loss do you feel guilty about? Or how do you rationalize or justify these feelings of guilt? And have you considered seeking forgiveness either from yourself or from others involved?
So self blame, is one of the way guilt has manifested after our losses. Questions like, did I do something that caused my water to break? Did I work too much? You know, and me being the person who tends to hold such high accountability and responsibility, there's a sense of guilt for not being able to protect them, right? I was able to already process these guilt and self-blame feelings, and I was able to let it go. It took a while. It's not easy for sure, but I'm able to accept that there are so many things that is beyond my control. That no matter how I tried, it was truly beyond my control. At
Mm.
one point where Gio's gone and I still have Josh, it was I thought I could still hold on to Josh for as long as I could. But when my body started to show signs that like it's time, you know, and I was already trying to parang resist that no,
Mm-hmm.
this is not happening, this cannot be happening, and I know that it's going to come to the point that I'm going to have to make that decision, very very difficult decision, and I wouldn't want for anyone to be in that position of deciding whether to lose that dream of your child, to lose a child.
Right. Right.
um it's really it's really a lot. And the truth is, you know what, there was nothing that I did that could have prevented it from happening.
Mm-hmm.
My body was is saying, I need to let go,
Right.
right? And then
Right.
everything that I could do to protect them in the best way possible with as much information and experience that I had to carry a first pregnancy at that time. So let
Right.
alone a twin pregnancy, which is high risk. And yes, I've forgiven myself from it. It's not easy talking about it now, but
I
yeah,
imagine.
it's really hard. But I'm
Right.
and we can only improve on and be better. And
Exactly. I was also wondering, as you were sharing about guilt, I was thinking of talking about asking you about regret. Do you have any regret whatsoever? Like, um, are there any decisions or actions that regret from your relationship with the person you've lost, the twins? Um, how do these regrets influence your grieving process? And is there anything you wish you could have said or done differently?
so for me, there's no regrets. So just imagine, that we are in this fertility journey for almost 10 years. I would say it's since 2016. I think at this point I can say that I've done everything that I could, uh,
Mm,
in my power, my ability to do what it takes to just have my children, my family, however that looks like right now. I can acknowledge the short life that I got to experience with Gio and Josh, just pure souls that I get to experience their love, and I felt privileged to be able to carry them.
yeah.
I wouldn't be doing the work that I do now, I would say, if I wouldn't know the things that I know now. Uh,
Mm,
and exploring so much potential in me if it wasn't for them. So this is why I would say I have no regrets. I think in a way, iniisip ko rin na perhaps I wasn't ready. God knows what's truly in my heart.
yeah.
Um, and I'm sure that happened because He know I can be a better parent
Mm-hmm.
in the future.
Definitely.
So yeah,
Yes, for sure.
so that's my just my thoughts. Ikaw, ate, do you have any regrets?
I don't recall like really having regrets with whatever happened and how it happened because it happened. Um
Mhm.
and as ugly as anyone can imagine it to have happened. Maybe if right now I had to think of regrets, it would probably be the way I responded eventually over time. How just the response of all that denial and everything else that I did in reaction to that loss. That's what I probably regret. But in a way, then again, if I have to turn back time, I wouldn't be here the way I am now, thinking the way I am now, being with who I am now with. And so, yeah, I think everything just happened. Now I can say it for a reason, and there is a purpose for it. So, yeah.
Let's move on to our next question, and this emotion will be sadness. Okay. So let's describe the depths of our sadness since experiencing our loss. And do we find it difficult to find moments of joy or happiness amidst our sadness? And how do we cope typically with overwhelming feelings of sadness? Do you want to start with that at this stuff?
Again, in the way that things happened in my journey of grief and loss.
Mhm.
Um, I was really sad with trying to bring justice on how people have. I mean, I'm not even just pointing out to my loss. I'm pointing out to sometimes it's something that's so real, not just for me, but for everyone. And it just made me so sad to think, how could anyone have died that way? Or how is it even possible? The thoughts of just how is it even possible for a child to lose a life that way? That's just something that brought me to a very, 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 very dark place. But then again, because I think it's also a good thing that my kids were very young at that time. And that's also one of the reasons why I really think both my girls are my heroes, because being the sole parent, I was living in a home with just helpers or just the kids. I didn't have really family with me. Having to focus looking at those two young kids and having this emotion that I felt so sad, so depressed, and all these other emotions that we actually just talked about, um because of the two kids, I had to find a picture of joy because they were too young to even understand what sadness is all about. You know what I'm saying? So in a way, I'm thankful that the two girls were there and they were present, and it gave me all the reasons to find means and ways to kind of stay afloat
Mm.
and still try to be happy having time with them as they grew up. And at times when it's overwhelming for me, the easiest way for me to not be so traumatic for the kids, because I initially, when I started drinking, before I got into alcoholism, I used to drink just to go to sleep. So the way I coped with that sadness without having really to talk about it to the kids, I
Mhm.
just drink alcohol and it would put me to sleep. Then
Mhm.
the next day I wake up, then I think of things to do that would make the kids feel good. And but yes, very sad about all the realities of what's happened. And then again, I say it's not just about my loss. It could be for everybody else's very unfair loss.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I don't know how you did it, but again, I think at that time you were just surviving, right? So yung sa akin naman, I can say that with the first year of our losses, that was when I felt the most sad ever in my existence of my life. I've never felt such sadness that I didn't know myself. I was so unfamiliar of that person that I pitied myself for being in so much pain and suffering after our losses. On average, if you ask me, my sadness level was like 9 out of 10 within the first year of our losses. So it took me some time for me to even see joy and happiness. And if I do, it was short lived.
Mhm.
Minsan na nafe-feel guilty ako na, oh, should I be happy about this little burst of joy?
Mhm.
Because I feel like parang if I show some sense of joy, parang does that mean I'm over them? And I don't want that, right? But anyway, I've already processed that. But I just happened to recall that that was my reasoning when I was talking to my therapist at that time. The sadness and the dark cloud was over me for most of the time within the first year. But
Mhm.
how did I cope? A lot of crying, a lot. Again, it got to the point where I felt like I'm gonna run out of tears. Support group was there, getting therapy. I really felt like I needed an outlet other than writing and just crying because it's
Mhm.
not enough. It was not enough. I needed an extra support and help to help me make sense of what I was going through and how, I also to give me the tools on how I can cope better, right?
Mhm. Right.
So again, seek help if you I know it's hard at the beginning to even see that light. But again, everybody, you know yourself more than anyone else. And
That's
I
true.
know everybody is on a different path, right?
Mhm.
But it's okay to ask for help.
It
And
is.
it's valid what it is that you're going through. But if you are to ask me now as to how I cope at the moment, because from time to time I still do get the sense of sadness. The same,
Mm.
I when I feel like I need to cry, I just let it in the way that feels right for me. So sometimes I would actually, again, in terms of tangible things that I can actually do to make bring light to my emotion, I would buy myself flowers. Literally, I would yeah, just like the song, right? By Miley Cyrus. I'm gonna buy myself flowers, just to help cheer me up. And then remembering Gio and Josh. So I would have like a little space for them with their urn, and I would light the candle, and it's like a connection of my love for myself and my love for them. I would find ways to honor that, that is tangible, that I can see, and that would make me feel good. I
Yeah.
like to go to spas or like really pampering myself. And also sometimes I like to play the piano. I find playing music, not just the piano or even just listening to music alone, is a way to, there's something within me, like I guess maybe just my soul in general, that makes me express that emotion better,
Yeah.
when I listen to music. So I don't stay long in that state of sadness now as much as I used to, but I'm able to really bounce back up much faster now. So as long as finding ways that works for you, for the individual. For me, I know the little interests and hobbies that would make me feel good. Like I like to do art as well. I would paint,
Yeah.
as a way of expression of that.
Yeah.
Great. I haven't been doing a lot of painting lately, but I feel like I should start going getting my hands dirty and paint again. So yeah, and gardening as well is sometimes what I would do to find a way to see joy in a tangible way. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'd like to make a little comment about a little of what you shared. And you mentioned earlier about that you would actually cry, as part of your coping. And it just, I just wanted to say, I think that's also probably why now, well, it's been 20 years, right? After loss, after another loss to another. And like I said, the kids have been really little, small. So all throughout these years, it's only recently that they've seen me cry. I've never showed them me when I'm sad because I didn't want them growing up thinking, remembering that moment, like, why is my mom sad? Or it could actually affect them in a way that would affect them now. So,
Mhm.
yeah, the reason I'm saying that is I think it also is very healthy when someone feels like crying to just allow it to happen, because I didn't allow myself to experience that, nor did I want to talk about it. So
I'm proud of you.
I know, right? Yeah, I was made to believe before crying was for the weak, but now crying is actually healing. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, as we were talking about a lot of emotions, the next one that we talk about is depression. I think everybody goes through depression. Have you experienced symptoms of depression since the loss? Or how does these symptoms impact your daily functioning and overall well-being? Have you considered seeking professional support or therapy to address your depression? If you did,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
still.
So thanks for that question. Within the first year, for sure, the low mood, depressed mood was pretty consistent. But I felt deep inside that I'm more than just depression. Again, closer to the 8th month after our losses, my doctor was technically ready to diagnose me with clinical depression. But in a way, I was like, I know that perhaps I have all these symptoms, but deep down inside of me, I know that I'm more than that, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to settle with that diagnosis. It's not who I am. And I was pretty much receptive to learning and really understanding with what was going on with me. So again, I seek help in the ways that I know how. But those symptoms, persistent sadness, low mood, sleep disturbances,
Mm,
nightmares, insomnia, flashbacks.
right.
I'm sure like some
I'm
PTSD.
sure a lot of people can relate and resonate to what you're saying as
Yeah,
well.
difficulty concentrating, right? Difficulty making decisions, loss of interest. The
Mm,
things that I used to enjoy, it was totally really not happening during
yeah.
the year. And again, it was very timely because I guess I was really, really praying to, for God to give me that hope. And then at that time, 8 months to 12 months, closer to a year, that was between roughly the time when I met Coach Boy. And
Mm,
the healing just, I was boosted. I was lifted up. That was the answer that I was looking for. So with every scenarios that is faced, there's always an opportunity. And when, because again, Coach Boy was introduced not to me directly, but through JB, through a friend, and then JB started talking about Coach Boy, and I was like, oh, what does he do?
mm,
And then I was like, oh, okay. I actually messaged Coach Boy directly on the side. Um,
uh,
I was like, you know what? I just had that sense like I need to reach out to this person. And so I did. And then the rest is history and I'm here.
nice, very nice. Yes, I actually, yeah, I can relate, and it's also actually the same as it happened to me as well. The way it happened to you, everything you were saying, I totally get it, and so does everybody else. Yeah, it makes a difference when you have people to talk to that know how to understand and pacify you in a way that it's enough that you yourself feel you're really understood, kind of thing. So yeah.
Safety is key, right?
Yes.
All right. So let's move on to the next emotion, which is shame, right?
Mhm.
Have you noticed any feelings of shame surfacing in your grieving process? How do you perceive yourself in relation to the loss? Do you feel any responsibility or blame? Or are there any specific thoughts or beliefs about yourself that contributes to feelings of shame? Do you want to start on that?
Well, yeah, sige. About my loss. Um, there are a lot of things I can think of when it comes to just loss, not just of the loss of my husband or my son or my mom or my dad, but there have been instances in the past when I became ACEs aware. So talking about those type of losses to myself and the way I reacted, the way I just perceived everything. I'm very shameful, and I've been affected by shame because not only the thought of alcoholism or the use of drugs or stuff like that. I'm ashamed of it, but I'm understanding that it was part of the whole process and my survival. Um, and also, in a way, I've been ashamed because of how I've been judged by people. For a moment, there really thought that everything that was said about me could have been true. Like, yeah, maybe I'm really not enough. And so, yeah, there's a lot that I'm ashamed of, and a lot of issues in the past that shaming really ate me up. So, yeah, that's my thoughts to that.
Thank you, Ate Steph. I know within our Filipino culture, there's that sense of shame or hiya, right? Especially for these kind of things, more so for the cultural expectations of the grieving process, right? So that when someone is grieving or showing signs of mental health struggles, it
Yeah.
is viewed by the culture as something that is a source of shame and
Hmm.
embarrassment, which is very unfortunate. But thanks for sharing that. For me, I would say that there was really nothing specific that led me to feeling that sense of shame after our losses. If anything, I was actually much more enraged with how some people make, again, insensitive remarks or comments like, what a shame, maybe she's not capable.
Yeah.
Initially after the loss, of course there was a sense of blame at first, but it was short lived, I would say.
Yeah.
um, because I didn't let that comment really eat me in a way, because I was like, no, something's got to be done. There's something wrong. So like here I am trying to find a source of that sense of anger that I had because of how people and in the culture just really put this shame on us. And it's like, no, something's got to be done, right?
Mm.
So but again, it was that sense of self shame or self blame. For me, it was short lived. I was able to process it and let it go. And again, going back to how within our Filipino culture, because when the they view that as a source of when someone's going through the grieving process and thinking that there's a set timeline to the grieving process of an individual. That's just it's just not right. We cannot just keep putting it under the rug and forget about it, right?
Mm.
As if it never exists, because ultimately every person do experience grief.
Mm.
And what people don't acknowledge is that emotional health is also very important, right? So I feel this very deeply, that I would take that it would take a certain person who would be brave enough to unpack and really bring light to these issues so that the history doesn't repeat itself. So for me, who is grieving my children that is not here with us, it would mean a lot for me that I'm able to bring that awareness, break the stigma,
Yeah.
um, especially in mental health, breaking the cycle of shame within the culture, and
Mm.
really understanding my own roots of trauma
Yeah.
and ancestral wounding. So for me, to hide my grief and not talk about the reality of the losses felt like self betrayal. So how can I possibly deny my children that they've even existed, even for a short period of time? I just cannot do that, right? So yeah, this is probably for another episode.
Episode. Right.
But
Right.
I can go on and on. But do you have any?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for sharing, Shay.
Okay,
Thank you.
actually, thank you, the stuff. I just wanted to add, I was kind of researching something about shame. I do have a book um, of Brene Brown, Atlas of the
Well,
So Atlas of the Heart, I have that. And I was reading about shame. And she said that shame thrives on secrecy, silence, and judgment. And that
mm-hmm.
if we continue to live our life in secrecy,
Mm-hmm.
silence, ongoing self judgment, even,
Yeah. Yeah.
shame will continue to take over and control us, right? So again, it's not just the shame that people puts on us, but it's also understanding those shame within ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we judge ourselves um, harshly, then that can also continue to thrive, and that includes the shame. So
Right.
with that being said, if you are someone who is grieving and have a vulnerable story to tell, know that we are here for you, and it's
Yes.
okay to seek professional help or even just like support if you are struggling in your grief. And there is no shame in doing so. Yeah, so
So, okay. Do we wrap it up?
let me just finish one more thing. So the last thing that shame needs is more shame and judgment from others. So as per Brene Brown, do you know what she says about how to heal shame? It's through having empathy and self-compassion. That's what's going to heal shame.
So, yes, thank you. And that wraps up another episode of Embrace the Echo Grief Talks. We hope that our conversation today has shed some light on the complex emotions that come with grief and loss.
Remember, grief is a journey unique to every individual, And it's okay, to feel a wide range of emotions throughout that process, whether it's anxiety, sadness, or even moments of joy amidst the pain. Know that you are not alone.
That's right. And if you found today's episode helpful or know someone who might benefit from it, please consider sharing it. You never know who might find comfort in knowing that their feelings are valid and understood.
Thank you, Ate Steph. So I just wanted to plug before we end Step Forward Purple Heart Grief Support Group. Once a month, it's a confidential support group. Please check our UDRiVe Facebook page for more info about this or message us in the email below. If you're interested in attending, there's also a registration in the description link. So also don't forget to please like, follow, and subscribe to our UDRiVe Facebook and YouTube channel and watch other episodes of Embrace the Echo Grief Talks for more insightful conversations, stories, and support on navigating the journey of grief. So see you next time. Take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, it's okay to embrace the echo of your grief. This is Shay, and with my co host, Stephanie, signing off from the Embrace the Echo Grief Talks. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.